I'd like to call this meeting the St. Andrews Task Force to order. First on the agenda this evening is reports. First up, the Community Hospital Work Group.
That's me, because Bruce has not been here for a while. We're hard at work, and the hospital visits have begun, which is why quite a number of our group are not here. So we will have more to tell you after we finish our visits.
Did I hear that some of your group was going way north today?
Oh yes, they're going to spend the night
Oh, wow.
on the road. It's all good.
I wanted to use that header. That's why I kind of on the agenda put a couple of spots. Last time we met in the gymnasium at the elementary school, Patty Siebel had her report, and honestly, I hadn't read it at that point, but I have read it now. Is Patty here tonight?
No, she's not.
She's on the road.
She's on the road.
She's on a field trip.
So I kind of just wanted to reiterate that report, which I think it's not X's and O's and it's not graphs and numbers, but it's a qualitative view at some of these interviews, and I got a lot from reading it. And if you haven't read it yet, it's interesting. And if Patty was here tonight, I was going to pick on her and see if she would do one for free for the town of Booth Bay, but not here. So that's why I put it on the agenda. Is if Patty was here tonight, I was going to have her.
You might hold that up so that people can see what it looks like. If you did not get a copy of this at the meeting, there are some back here. And it's well worth looking through. It's the story, really, of what people have been telling us, and it's put together in a very readable fashion.
Absolutely.
And then there's another piece that Andrew Twaddle took these interviews and did statistical information on what the interviews tell us. So that it's a companion piece to this. And there's Tom, who has been living with the production of this for a long time, so he may have something else to say. But I highly recommend it to you. It's very readable, and the thing I like about it is that it gives a sense of the spirit of the community in a way that I haven't seen anything else really like it. And being a newcomer, it helps me to get to know the flavor of the people in the Booth Bay region. Patty did a super job.
Outstanding job.
We've done a lot of focus on X's and O's and dollars and cents and numbers and data.
And this puts a face to it.
And that this is one of those qualitative interviews. It's really good.
Mike?
Quick sidebar. Another way to get a copy, if you get the newsletter, it was included as an attachment with Patty's report and Andrew's report. If you're not on the newsletter mailing list, it's very easy to get on that mailing list, and frankly, it's the cheapest way for us to get information to you. So if you're not on the list, get on it tonight.
And Jim, Ivantage was in doing interviews the last couple of days.
Yeah,
here.
I'm sorry. I skipped
That's okay.
right over it. The other thing that I wanted to report is that in the last 2 days, Ivantage, so Scott Goodspeed and Ralph Gabaro, their two consultants, have been here doing interviews, and I see some familiar faces of people that have been doing interviews with them today. A couple of things to discuss is my perspective as I watch people come in, a neat cross-section of people that I've heard have very passionate views on one side, Lincoln County Healthcare, staff members and trustees, and then people that I didn't even really know were as passionately interested in one way or the other. So I think once they put that together in a fashion that they're used to in reporting, that'll be an interesting outlook. I'm excited to see that. Another thing is that I've got to pick their brain. They were using our house for the last 2 days, and so in between meetings I got to talk to Ralph and Scott, and they're very intelligent men, and from the hip pocket can rattle off data, and they know hospitals better than anyone we've had to interact with so far. I mean, really just know, I mean, Scott rattled off a reference from across the country, just off the top of his head. Knew how many hospital beds they had, and some of the trials and tribulations, and some of the successes and some of the failures, without researching the data banks. But they also have a huge database. So that was very interesting. At the end of the day, I asked them what they wanted to report back, telling them that people are very interested in this. And they just really wanted to report back that the quality of the interviews that they had were exactly what they were looking for. They got the information that they wanted from the interviews, and that the one thing that resonated was the passion in the community. They'll be able to report more on that at a later date. They really finished some of the interviews. They have more, but they finished today's interviews at like 4:30. So hard for them to report tonight.
Questions? Next under reports, the data analysis report.
I didn't know if you had anything to report, Mike, so we just...
Nothing this meeting, thank you.
Nothing at this point? Okay, excellent.
Volunteer coordinator.
The volunteer coordinator's not here tonight. She has a family emergency. So I'm going to pretend that I'm Peggy Powis.
Good luck with that.
I speak really energetically. Everybody is, I think everybody looks forward to Peggy's report. If this isn't as good, I know. So if you haven't got her weekly report, that is available. There's some copies out here. That really speaks to most of the things that Peggy would report. I don't know the exact amount of the Second Opinion Fund. Last I knew it was over $9,000. She would state the Second Opinion Fund needs your donations, and those can be made at the first. They have the pledge cards. The pledge cards can also be obtained through Peggy, and I think we have some here in town as well. I was going to do something else while I'm on the volunteer coordinator part. This is what Peggy wouldn't report. This is what I would report. But I wanted to do it under the volunteer coordinator section. Last night, the Town of Boothbay Board of Selectmen met, and one of the items that they addressed, there was a Spirit of America award. The Spirit of America award, which last year went to the Woodchucks group, is designed to recognize and commend organizations and projects for their community service. It's really a volunteerism award. So the Boothbay Board of Selectmen have decided to award it to the St. Andrews Task Force volunteers. So then I asked Peggy, can you help me put together that list? And he was here, so he'll vouch for it. Peggy came into my office. I can't be in the meeting tonight, but here's the list. Exactly like
That's
that.
exactly how she did it.
Now this list isn't inclusive either. I mean, as good as Peggy is, this is a huge list, but I know that there were probably missing people. So I would encourage you, if you know, a lot of you people are here are volunteers. Please check to see if you're on the list. We want to have as inclusive a list as possible so that we can award the Spirit of America award the way the Town of Boothbay Selectmen want it to be, completely inclusive of all of the volunteers that have added to this process.
And we thank you for all your work. Thank you so much.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, we couldn't do it without you folks. Everything you've brought to the table is amazing, and thank you very much. Next under reports, Boothbay Region Ambulance Service Work Group.
I just seen ambulance service members walk in, but I haven't, once again, I always put them on the spot. Do you have anything new that you want to cover
There's nothing new. We're working through the class that Lincoln County Healthcare is helping us put on. Everybody's doing the entrance exams now. And I believe Lincoln County Healthcare is going to try to work directly with the towns about the contribution. It does look like it's probably not a contribution that they can give directly to us because of the safe harbor laws, but both attorneys on Maine Health side and attorneys on our side are still looking into that. So there is ongoing work at Lincoln County Healthcare and Maine Health to help offset the costs, but I don't have any answers on that yet.
All right. Mike?
Do you have any feel if that contribution is for 1 year or in perpetuity?
The initial preliminary agreement that they came to us with is a ongoing, I think a 4-year ongoing agreement that tapers off throughout the 4 years.
So it tapers off.
Yes. And I think it was also, the intent was it would be reviewed annually to see what the call volume was and see what the actual need and effect to the taxpayers was. So I think it will be an ongoing process.
Anyone else? Next under reports, Lincoln County Regional Planning Economic Impact Study.
I put that on the agenda thinking that Stuart Smith might be here tonight. Stuart's obviously not here. They had other things to attend to, and he sounded sick as well, so I'm glad he's not here. So I don't think we have anything else to report at this point.
Okay. Legal work group.
This comes and goes on the agenda as needed be. The first thing that I wanted to discuss is we saw in the register that the Booth Bay Harbor had an open discussion about the organizational structure of the task force. So I put in your packets some of the exchange that we had in that regard. But I wanted to also address it here because when you read it in the register, there's concern about the structure. Then you're like, is that one organization's concern of the structure? Is there real concern? And the exchange that we had about this, I just want to tell you the perspective of the task force right now. The task force is an interlocal agreement between the 4 towns. What does the interlocal agreement say? It says the 4 towns will work together on a task. It kind of establishes the task force as a committee style. It doesn't really give them a lot of authority. It just says you'll work together on this. So that's what we did, and the representative ended up being selectmen, which worked out even better. The direct representatives for those towns. There was a couple of things that the town of Booth Bay did to firm that organizational structure up a little bit more. The town of Booth Bay and actually made a formal motion to allow our organization to be the administrator of the task force, which would allow us, with all the authority that the town of Booth Bay has, enter into contracts, like the contract with Julius and the contract with iVantage. So the task force does not sign those contracts, the town of Booth Bay does. But the town of Booth Bay has been pretty gracious in putting the authority with the task force.
And I really want to speak to that, is that even though Booth Bay has taken on the responsibility, they couldn't have been more open in letting us have voice and vote, really. So, to me, this is, I said from the start of this thing, if nothing else, no matter what happens with St. Andrews, the fact that we have these 4 towns working together is just, it's historic, and it's really excellent. And I really want to thank Booth Bay in particular for taking on the onus, but still allowing the task force to do what we need to do. Sorry to interrupt you, but.
No, and 3 months ago, when the task force didn't have as many of you and less structure, there was a little bit of faith that the selectmen had to put into the task force creating itself, and I think that has happened. Another item that the town of Boothbay did was to make the town of Boothbay the fiduciary agent of the task force. So we control all the money that comes in and out goes through the same process that goes through the town of Boothbay. So money comes in through the treasurer, it goes out through the warrant process. The selectmen actually verify that, sign off, and the checks get paid. Now, all that money is kept in a separate account, and I give those reports to the task force every week when we meet. So they can see the money as it goes in and as it comes out, and regular reporting. You can donate to the town of Boothbay. Actually, the lawyer would pay attention to this one. I got to phrase it specifically. You can donate to the town of Boothbay and the task force and write it off in your taxes, but please consult with the person that does your taxes. Don't take the town manager said it right in the middle of the task force meeting. Consult with the person that does your taxes, but donating to your town can be a write-off. And I think you need to have whoever does your taxes look at that specifically. Now, a 501c3 is a little bit clearer sometimes, and if you need a letter from the town stating that you gave a certain amount, we can provide that, and I think we are providing that. I wanted to make sure that we recognize that, because the ability to write off the donation was something that was brought up in the meeting. Now, the one side effect of being a committee style or what we put together, which is cutting edge, a little bit different, does make it so the task force has to abide by FOA laws or freedom of access laws, which mean that everything has to be public, except for the few exceptions that you get that selectmen have. You can meet with your lawyer. I can give those lists, but so far the only exception we've used is to meet with a lawyer. There's reason behind that. If you talk about legal strategy in front of a camera, somebody will use it against you. So that is the biggest restraint. And so one of the things that was discussed is if you can't negotiate privately, then the negotiation will have a hard time. That is probably true, but I can tell you right now the task force hasn't openly tried to negotiate anything. They've simply just worked on positioning, data, research, and discussing with Lincoln County Healthcare. There hasn't been a negotiation as far as I see it. It could be, you could say that we could put this in a 501c3, completely reorganize it, and it could operate differently. That is absolutely correct. But I think one of the arguments here is that we are being critical of how a 501c3 represents its people, so then therefore it's hypocritical to say we're going to become a 501c3 so that we can enjoy some of the privacies that we get from that. That's all I have on that. I'll leave it there. But if anybody has any questions.
Questions?
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yes. So the next thing in the legal work group is, I know when everybody came to the elementary school the other day, they wanted to hear Julius come out with his nasty legal opinion. It's not going to happen. But what we do have now, what is ready for public consumption pending the task force, and we discussed at our Board of Selectmen meeting now, is the legal position paper of the task force, which is, I'm not going to state the entirety of the legal position, but the legal position of the task force. It's a 15 page, and we didn't waste a bit of white there. It's all packed into 15 pages of the legal the legal views and the complications that we've uncovered through a legal analysis of the decisions that Lincoln County Healthcare has had in the services at St. Andrews. With that, can I point out some of the points?
Absolutely.
Okay. I highlighted some things that I want to go over, and really trying to take out key points of this is hard because the entirety of it is important. And if the task force deems it necessary under new business, we're going to make this completely readily available for everybody, but I think we need to talk a little bit about how that's done.
What page are you
I'm going to discuss as I go along. And I'll have to admit, I took these notes today, so if I jump around a little bit, excuse me. So it starts off with the current status and gets into history. And then on page 2, discusses that Lincoln County Healthcare's powers over St. Andrews mirror those of Maine Health. That has been a common question. How are these organizations layered? So that's identified here in the position paper. But what happened is Miles' management team was largely placed in control of Lincoln County Healthcare. So this completely changed the governance dynamics of St. Andrews relative to Maine Health, and resulted to a large extent in disenfranchising the former St. Andrews board. I'm pulling pieces out. The result is one board and one management team instead of a traditional board that was representative of the Boothbay region and served the interests so well for many years. And now there's a single chief executive officer and a single group of individuals appointed by Maine Health who wear 3 hats. They serve simultaneously as the board of Lincoln County Healthcare, the board of Miles, and the board of St. Andrews. While some board members are representative of the Boothbay region, they are the minority on the new board. Although this governance structure can work most well in most day-to-day situations, a potential and built-in conflict arises when the interests of one community differ from the other community served. For example, when the interests of Miles differ from the interests of St. Andrews, and that appears to be the situation. Since Lincoln County Healthcare was formed, it's gradually eliminated the service in St. Andrews. And it explains further in 2010 how the services were further reduced. There is factual information in here that backs that information up, and I've highlighted some of that, but I'm skipping. So in regards to the decision to close St. Andrews on page 4, closing St. Andrews is a breach of trust to the residents of the Boothbay Peninsula. St. Andrews supporters and benefactors, it's a breach of trust to St. Andrews supporters and benefactors and the St. Andrews employees and clinicians. The closing of St. Andrews will divert charitable assets donated by the people of the Boothbay Peninsula towards the purpose not intended by the donors and the benefactors. So essentially what they're saying is that anybody that's made donations to St. Andrews as a 501c3, their intent was to them as a hospital. It goes on. This gets put together. So Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare's proposed actions are a breach of trust. Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare propose to terminate St. Andrews Hospital status constitutes a breach of trust subject to the Attorney General's enforcement. On and on. You can see I'm taking pieces out. I could read the entire 16. The Attorney General's Maine Consumer Law Guide provides some information. And in quotations, charities are prohibited from solicited charitable donations, and then using the money for purposes other than what was promised would be done. Continuing on, and I starred this one, so it must be really good. St. Andrews has benefited substantially from generous support of Boothbay Region's communities in the form of philanthropic giving, local tax exemptions, and other community contributions. The support has been given to St. Andrews for the purpose of supporting St. Andrews as a hospital. Some history involved, and then St. Andrews' major charitable purpose, as described in the Articles of Incorporation, is clear: to establish, operate, and maintain for scientific, charitable, and education and benevolent purposes a public hospital, clinical, infirmary, and retirement community for the care and treatment of sick, wounded, infirmed, or aged persons, on and on. A hospital is important. It's in the Articles of Incorporation, and we've substantiated that is, you just don't write it in. You have to do it. It's the law. So this is a violation of Maine Nonprofit Corporation Act. So here, St. Andrew's articles are quite clear that one of the primary purposes is to maintain a hospital. Now, Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare have unilaterally decided without community input that St. Andrews will no longer engage in its community-supported primary purpose, the primary purpose that's supported for 100 years. This is a violation of law. The assets don't belong to the board, they belong, or the management, or the sole corporate member of St. Andrews. Instead, the assets belong to the communities that have showered the benefits on the nonprofit for years. And I'm sorry if this is broken, I'm putting it all together. And then, why is this very, very important? Closing St. Andrews is inconsistent with the definitive agreement. The definitive agreement, if you haven't been to all of our meetings, in 1996, when the St. Andrews Hospital became affiliated with Maine Health, they said, okay, we will affiliate, but here's the rules. And one of those things was that the rule was the definitive agreement. And Maine Health agreed to it. And one of the things that came out of that was their commitment to maintain at a minimum 24-hour emergency services in the Boothbay Harbor region as part of the Maine Health system. This section of the agreement provides that Maine Health approved St. Andrews government. The section essentially says that they have agreed to keep up with that part of the deal. But they did say that the St. Andrews Governing Board could terminate such services if it deemed no longer necessary and appropriate. But once again, we get in a conflict with the Articles of Incorporation. St. Andrews, our Articles of Incorporation, although amended for the affiliation, retains St. Andrews' primary purpose of maintaining a hospital. So not only have they been amended, but they maintain that part that says it will retain it, it will be a hospital. So there was a conscious effort to amend the Articles of Incorporation. It wasn't an afterthought. That was just, oops, we didn't do that along the way.
Two I's really important there at the top.
Right. So this, I think I highlighted the entire paragraph. So St. Andrews, as well as the leaders of the community served by St. Andrews, many who were integral to the negotiations during Maine Health's takeover bid, would not have agreed to a takeover of St. Andrews if hospital closure or any substantial change in healthcare was a possibility. Community leaders who directly participated in the 1997 negotiations with Maine Health have stated that Maine Health specifically reassured St. Andrews that 1, the hospital closure was not a possibility, and 2, St. Andrews would always have the ability to walk away from the affiliation. St. Andrews amended the definitive agreement to create a process by which Maine Health and St. Andrews could terminate the affiliation. The process requires the parties to enter non-binding mediation, and if the mediation does not create progress, the affiliation can be terminated. So those are important designations. So we've talked about how the St. Andrews Hospital is a minority control of Lincoln County Healthcare, but they have the ability to terminate the affiliation, but through what means in current day? It's a good question. Because Lincoln County Healthcare, Miles, and St. Andrews Board are elected by Maine Health and Miles led, it is difficult to know whether the St. Andrews Board representatives of the community St. Andrews actually serves would have opposed the decision to close St. Andrews and voted to terminate the affiliation with Maine Health. The world will never know. And then another star, so this must be really good too. By affiliating with St. Andrews and not amending St. Andrews' Articles of Incorporation, Maine Health implicitly agreed to be a steward of St. Andrews' main charitable purpose of operating a hospital. What does that mean? That when Maine Health took over Lincoln County Healthcare, they take over those Articles of Incorporation that says this is what we're going to do. So it's Maine Health's responsibility to maintain those Articles of Incorporation, one of which was to maintain a hospital. There is some discussion in here, and I won't get into too much, about the fiduciary relationship between Maine Health and the trustees now, and the fact that they both have to maintain those fiduciary responsibilities. This is where the extreme talent of our lawyer comes into play. Rhode Island Federal District Court, at the urging of the Massachusetts Attorney General, concluded that under Massachusetts law, a fiduciary relationship exists between a nonprofit health system parent and wholly owned nonprofit subsidiary hospital. This is Lifespan Corp versus New England Medical Center Incorporated. And what they concluded in this, with the concern, the concern there is not with competing shareholder interests, but with competing charitable objectives between parent and subsidiary. Even when the parent is a subsidiary's sole voted member, they have different aims and different interests of the system as a whole and may diverge from those of a given hospital. In significant respects, the benefactors of the hospital, namely the patients and the community, stand in a position similar to the minority shareholders in a non-wholly owned for-profit subsidiary, in that they are vulnerable to the power of the controlling entity. So what are we saying here? In another state in which there's an extremely similar situation, they've found that the patients are actually vulnerable in the same way that a shareholder would be. So opens that legal door, which is something we're very interested in. Another star. Hey. St. Andrews' two parent organizations, Lincoln County Healthcare and Maine Health, owe a fiduciary duty to St. Andrews and the Boothbay Peninsula communities and should have to prove that their actions towards St. Andrews were fair and free of undue influence.
Good star.
So maybe I use my stars willy-nilly, but that was a good one. St. Andrews charitable assets should be protected from waste and diversion by Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare, whether this comes in the form of Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare maintaining St. Andrews Hospital, the spin-off of St. Andrews into an independent hospital, or preserving the assets in a constructive charitable trust for the purposes of maintaining a hospital on the peninsula. Maine Health and Lincoln County Health's proposed plan to terminate St. Andrews Hospital status is clearly contrary to St. Andrews' primary purpose as provided in the Articles of Incorporation. The Attorney General may assert the Public Benefit Corporation lacks authority to take on the action and can act in a way to dissolve the corporation or in proceeding by the Attorney General to enjoin the corporation from performing the acts. That's a lot of authority that the Attorney General has in this particular case. The next part of the paper goes into closing St. Andrews will negatively impact the health and well-being of the Boothbay Peninsula patients. I'm not going to get into this section because I think we've covered that in these meetings. But I want to point out that pointing out it's in there is very important. In the very end of that section, maybe it's a minute, Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare have St. Andrews and the patients of the Boothbay Peninsula communities to bear the consequences of their decisions. So there are negative impacts, and they're responsible to bear those negative impacts. Some of those negative impacts are the ambulance service runs, which now the community has to make a decision about whether they want to support the added cost of maintaining the same service, which is a question that they get to make via vote at town meeting. Do they subsidize this service that now is very different but the same? The conclusion continues, and I don't want to conclude this as good as this. I can't conclude this as well as it's written. But the point is that when the task force came together, one of the first things they said is we need to get a grasp of what laws pertain. And I think now we have. The legal team that has worked with me behind the scenes, and Julius, who put this together, worked really hard. And this document is extremely important and something that we need to have comment on. I'm going to stop there because I want the task force to take discussion under new business. But actually, now that I've gone into my long rant, maybe we should just move that around.
I think we can jump into that right now, don't you?
I can say for myself, having read the white paper, Julius has put together a very well thought out, concise argument on why St. Andrews should stay as it is today. I think that we should send a copy of this to LCH so that they can look at it, so they can have questions for us if need be. And I think that we should have copies of this for the public.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this position paper as the task force to be representative of our position on the subject.
I would second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to accept the white paper as the task force position. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Congratulations.
And I would just add into that, having spoken with Stuart, that if he had been here, he would have supported it as well. So.
Agreed. Stuart and I talked earlier today, and he said he was in support. Knowing that we would be missing one, it was interesting. We wanted to know what his thoughts were. So Chuck dabbled into one thing. How do we use this best as a tool? I think the first thing that we want to do is, this is a pretty strong opinion. I want to know what Lincoln County Healthcare
Absolutely.
and Maine Health's opinion are to the points, the legal points that we make here. Help us understand how this isn't true. So I would like to send a formal copy to our Lincoln County Healthcare representatives and Maine Health representatives.
Absolutely.
And then try to schedule a follow-up so that we can
Absolutely.
discuss.
Can you
I'd like
make
to
it
send-
available online?
I'll get right into that one, right? I want to see how we can use it as an action tool, and then next is how we can use it as an education tool.
I'd like to see us send out 3 copies. One to Bill Karen from Maine Health, one to Peter Mundy, and one to Jim Donovan. That way, all 3 gentlemen will have it, and they can disseminate it to the boards.
Dance around that a little bit. I agree. I think when we send copies to them, telling them in probably a letter attached that we want all of the trustees to read this because we think that this has got some important legal arguments that they need to rebut.
Yeah, it's a potential game changer.
Yes. And then I think we need to quickly work on when we can sit down to discuss these legal issues.
Amen.
Do we have a date set with Lincoln County Healthcare for our next meeting with
I
them?
think they're meeting this Thursday, are they not?
Lincoln County Healthcare's regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is this Thursday.
So I think they're waiting to have that and then get to us. I could be wrong, but that's what I
Okay.
That's one thing we can work towards is putting together a meet and date when we can discuss, which we've discussed publicly as the position of the task force and has some serious legal issues. I mean, the answer needs to be necessary, it has to be public too.
Right.
So, send this off in its form to the Lincoln County Healthcare representatives in Maine Health. The next thing is, how do we use it as an education tool? Because I can tell you there's some aspects of this, like the Massachusetts Attorney General reference that is interesting, but you wouldn't know it unless you have this document. And getting highlights from me on Channel 7 or through the register is not the same as reading this cover to cover as you guys have. Can we make this available completely publicly? I mean, send it to the boards of selectmen, post it on our website.
I'd say
I
yes.
see no reason not to. I mean, this is what we're talking about. Let's be transparent up front.
Yeah.
Let's get it out there so the people can read it and see it and immerse themselves and smile.
Okay. Then I'll work on getting this posted to the Town of Boothbay website immediately, and then we have this in a digital format, and the attachments that go with this end up being, because there's lots of reference material.
If you would, make sure that Sue gets one too.
Absolutely, Sue can have my copy.
Wow. Complete with stars?
I'll give it a start. I think the points made in here are like Smith said, game changers. If we don't focus on the answers to these points at this right now.
All I can tell you is when I sat and read this afternoon in your office, yeah, we're liking where we're sitting right now. This is a good thing. It's certainly gonna give them some serious things to think about and talk about and issues to address.
Right. Now, it's completely plausible that Lincoln County Healthcare and Maine Health reads this, takes into account that this is a very good position and says, how do we rectify these situations? And I think that needs to be something that the task force says
Completely open to.
we would live with.
Oh,
Well, as we said last Tuesday night, we're willing to work with them as well.
Right.
So,
well, I think let's even go back to even July 31st, that first meeting we walked out of. I mean, the bottom line was, what's our goal? Our goal is to have St. Andrews exist. And how we get there and who takes the credit for it is immaterial, so long as we get the outcome we're looking for. Hey, they want to reassess and come back, and I'm all in favor of it. The sooner the better.
My impression from after the public officials briefing in July, or July, August, wow, that time flies, was that we were reacting to public outcry. We didn't know how to react, but we knew we were reacting to public outcry, and the public was saying, this doesn't seem right. And now we've pointed out that the public has rights in this, and that the public's rights haven't been represented properly. So I think that the path that we took, though sometimes was a little cloudy, is ended up being in the perfect direction. We now know what those outcry rights are, and we know how they can be rectified, and we need to know if that's possible.
well, in 3 months, with everyone's help and Julie's expertise, we've put together the white paper. By the first of next month, we'll have the iVantage study. That's a lot of arguments on our side too.
And I think like
Counteract
before
that.
April, we can have this thing put to bed and St. Andrews will be right where it needs to be.
Certainly is a pretty good argument. That, you know, this is how the community needs to be represented. The community's voice is pretty loud. We've measured that.
And thank you for that, my friends.
Yeah, we did measure that. You can argue whether the petition is scientific or do people, but you can't measure the outcomes of the volume. Volume, isn't that an interesting? That seems to come up every once in a while. The volume of the petition signers was there. So at this point in time, we need to just put one and one together. So we have the community's rights represented here. We have iVantage will hopefully in a couple of months have their expert idea of what you can do to make St. Andrew's Hospital profitable and viable, and maybe we can put those two things together.
Good.
Very good. Financial fund.
Financial and fundraising.
I'd like to start the financial report with our most recent checks, which came in today from the Lafayette Group Hotels. We received $500 from each of those for local businesses, and they acknowledged the fact that having a hospital in a town that has so many transient guests and visitors is important to them. And so we thank them very much and all of the people who have donated in the past week. Jim, what is our total funds?
And for those that don't know, that represents 3 different entities, so that were 3 $500 checks.
3 $500 checks.
St. Andrew's Project Fund is at, and this has received, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that, has received to date $58,489.64. And we have some expenses that have been paid to date, why doesn't it say that on this report? So the balance on the account is $48,322.88, but we have transactions Lumen. We have payments Lumen for Julius. The first payment to iVantage has cleared and isn't accounted for that.
Right.
And what's not represented there is the second opinion fund. So it's starting to become complicated, but it's all here, trust me.
So the donations are coming in, and I have to thank 2 of our fundraising committee members, Pam and Jennifer. They sent out a lot of letters to community groups and to local businesses who have resoundingly answered. And we do have a piece of business to conduct to approve a small expense for those mailings. I believe the total expense was $40 for the postage.
I move that we pay that timely and forthright manner.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Yeah. And I would just
Aye.
mention that the return on that $40 was $2,000 to date of those letters, so thank you very much. And and do you want to give a report about Friday?
Sure. We have a potluck supper coming up on Friday at 5 o'clock. We have quite a bit of stuff, you know, casseroles, salads, and desserts, all volunteer. My only fear is I've never done this before, so this is all kind of new. I have no idea how many people are going to show up, whether we'll have enough food or not. I'm hoping so. So don't, if you come early, don't eat a lot. If you have some left over, you can come back for second. But, no, I've had people calling and offering to buy stuff and make stuff, and so I think we're gonna do good.
And I have to say, I think Pam might be a little bit cautious because there are dozens of people who are cooking for this event.
Yes, there are.
And
Yes, we're
I
very
mean,
lucky.
we're talking about macaroni and cheese and
Oh,
turkeys
lasagna.
and
Oh, no, no
meatloaves.
turkey.
We are ready for turkey again.
We're having turkey.
And some really excellent desserts, and there's going to be a bake sale included that's
Yeah.
going to be run by a volunteer.
Yeah.
So if you can, please come out. It's only an $8 donation for the dinner and $3 for children. So everybody's welcome to join us. And I think there's going to be some talk by Peggy Powis, so she's going to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the task force's work. So hopefully, if we have some new faces in the crowd, we'll be able to share what we've done to date. And just enjoy
together.
Celebrating our success, because I think
Exactly.
this is truly inspirational.
And as I
Amen.
was
4 months in.
told, it is St. Andrew's
The
Day.
Yes, it
Feast of
is.
St. Andrew.
So I think that's very
St.
appropriate.
Andrew's Day.
And there is an elevator, by the way. If nobody's ever, it's
Right.
at the Booth Bay Fire Hall. So if you've never been there and you don't want to walk a lot of stairs, there is an elevator.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get someone to man it or
Yeah.
something. And I know the fellows from the fire company, a few of them will be there to direct parking and things, because, they kind of don't think we should park in front of the garage doors.
Party poopers.
Yeah, I know, there's always one in the bunch, right? But anyway, I think we're gonna have a good time, and like I said, we'll see how this works out, because I've never done it, so
How well was staffed?
please come, everybody.
We could use some task force members there to serve up the
5 o'clock.
plate.
Yeah. Well, Pam talked to me today, and I should be able to be there.
Okay, excellent.
I'm bringing 4 pies too.
What are the times? It says it starts at 5 to...
5 o'clock to 7 o'clock.
5 until we run out of food, John.
Okay, I'll make sure I make Thursday night.
Yeah. Exactly. So the potluck dinner, or I should call a community dinner on Friday, is our next event, and I think that might be the end of a long string of events that we've had recently in the last month.
I'm sure there'll be more coming.
I'm sure there will be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Have we heard how we did at the McSeagle's Thanksgiving dinner?
I
Yes.
have that right here. I'm reading from an email that Peggy sent. So the portion that the task force got from that is 1,356.
All right.
That's good.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had it in the stack, but I didn't mention it.
All right. So that's the end of the reports. We've taken care of the position paper. Just need a recap on the next meeting.
And I think the recap is the position paper, which is interesting. Making sure that we get the position paper available to the public and in the hands of the people that need to be reading it. And still continue to work with iVantage. That doesn't go to say that we don't still need volunteers, and Peggy's not here to say that, but she would if she was here. So her regular business hours, or business office hours in the library are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 2 to 4. So she still needs volunteers, we still need help, and we can still accept donations because although the position paper is strong, it's just a position paper at this point in time. It's just a legal opinion. And iVantage is still working. So funds are still needed to support those items.
I think she had a note in this week's update that she's not holding office hours this Friday because of the dinner.
Right.
That's correct.
That
And
time's being used
And
to
I also,
set everything up.
thinking ahead, would like to propose that we have our next 3 meetings as scheduled, but December 25th, I think maybe we ought to take the night off. In fact, I would recommend we don't meet that week at all, and the following week that we skip the 1st, and we'll go right to the 2nd, and have our next meeting on Wednesday, January 2nd of 2013, following the December 18th meeting, so that people can kind of plan ahead.
Sounds good to me.
and then another thing, I had that on my note and I don't know why I breezed over it. But we also need to think post-December, we're starting to get in conflicts of lots of people's schedules, so I think it's a later date we need to have a discussion about is regularly on Tuesdays working best. I don't think that discussion is necessary tonight.
It's something to be thinking about.
Something to think about. Every Tuesday night has been hard for. It's nice that it's a regularly occurring meeting, but now I know Stuart has conflicts. I know you have some possible conflicts. You have some possible conflicts. We need to discuss those and get that out publicly so that the people that show up for all the meetings, know when the meetings are.
Yeah. So we can readdress that next week.
Tom?
Public comment.
I wanted to make a comment on the position paper. I'm thoroughly impressed with the points that it elucidates and enunciates.
You'll be more impressed when you read the whole
In
thing.
my opinion, and especially once I read the whole thing. I remain concerned, despite the excellence of that paper, at the position that I'm not sure, it's not clear to me what position it is that the committee is taking. Is it the position that if Lincoln County says that, well, we made a mistake, all right, we'll keep the hospital open, then we all go home, leaving behind the same management situation, the same structure, the same governance that produced the problem in the first place? Isn't that what's...
Could I say that I think our number one goal, and I'm speaking at this point for myself, not for the task force, but for myself, the number one goal is that hospital remain open. That's the number one goal. If during that process, we can point out that there have been some issues that that the St. Andrews Hospital is not being represented properly, that is certainly a secondary goal that I would want to have Lincoln County Healthcare realize that perhaps it needs a standalone board of trustees for each of these entities so that they are being represented properly.
But my point is that they won't be. They can't be.
I think at this point, Tom, that we're a little, that is something I think we're all gonna be concerned with. But I think it's a little presumptuous of us at this point to just try to start talking about what the final product's gonna look like when we're getting closer to getting to where we can have the discussion. I don't think we can start setting the terms of the final outcome.
I
Well,
think
it's a
that,
question of what the final outcome is that you're looking for. If the final outcome is to keep St. Andrews Hospital open, it seems to me that anybody in their right mind at this point would choose to keep it open, including even the people running Lincoln County Healthcare. But that doesn't mean that they're going to give it up in any way. They're not going to change the existing governance or structure. The only people who, in fact, could do that is Maine Health, because they, as well as we, are ultimately owned by Maine Health. So the question is, what is it that we're after? And I, for one, again, I'm speaking just for myself, will be very disappointed if it turns out that we accede to a concession by Lincoln County Healthcare to the effect that, okay, we made a mistake, we'll keep the hospital open, but otherwise we own it, and as soon as you guys shut up, we'll continue doing what we've been doing. That's what I think we're in for.
I think the position paper brings a legal argument that is a Pandora's box, that you can't put the information that is now completely out there back in the box. And there needs to be some answers to how you get back in line with a proper governance structure. It's pretty clear that it's not in line now and that the decisions have led to harm. So I'd be interested to hear the answer from the people that are responsible for that improper alignment first. And that's I guess, that's where I want to leave it right now, it's first. I'm not
So
saying
if
there
they
isn't a
say-
second or a third.
If they say, okay, we made a mistake, we'll keep the hospital open as long as everything else stays the same, then we won't take the case that should be taken, in my opinion, to the Attorney General, who can tell them that, look, you guys have violated the Articles of Incorporation. A lot of people have donated time and money to St. Andrews. It should be distinct from the ownership of Maine Health and Lincoln County Healthcare. That's what I think should be done.
Right.
Duly noted.
Step by step.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
One,
Yeah.
I wanted to say something when you were talking about the aggrieved parties early on in your presentation. I think there are a number of us who have been strangely silent, and I wanted to speak for that group of people. And that is the taxpayers in the town of Boothbay Harbor. I own property, 2 properties in the harbor, and I agreed to support the budget of the town every year by paying my taxes. And I pay taxes at the level that I pay them because the hospital doesn't pay taxes. Therefore, that makes me a stockholder in the hospital, or a stakeholder, if you will. Because every time I pay my taxes, I'm helping them out. And I think that the taxpayers in Boothbay Harbor need to be more assertive about what they want and what they expect to go on at that property, because we're the ones that are supporting it every day of our lives.
Amen.
Dan?
I'd like to tag along on what Tom had to say. I think if we think that, Lincoln County Health is going to read the position paper and roll over and play dead, I think, we ought to, publicize what kind of booze we're drinking. Because, they're not going to do this. We've got to be separate from Lincoln County Health. We've got to have our own board of trustees. If we go back to the way it was, we're going to end up the same way 5-10 years down the road. So we've got to be separate from Lincoln County Health. We've got to have our own board of trustees. And, if we don't, we've been wasting our time.
This is Parrott has a good point, which is in the paper, and I breezed over it. Is that the tax exemption is represents a charitable donation as well, because the reason why they have that exemption is because of their charitable non-for-profit existence. And as we've pointed out, there are some issues with that, which I think are things that also would be analyzed in a tax exemption application. So it's a
The
good
only
statement.
piece of property down there that's listed on the tax assessor's rolls in the town of Boothbay Harbor is the little white Victorian house. That is it. And none of the rest of it is even listed. That's valuable real estate down there. I don't know if there's an appraiser in the office, but that's lots and lots and lots of tax money if they were not tax exempt.
And I think
So-
it's possible, I mean, I'm very close to the paper as I've been there every step as it evolved into what it has. And that's the other thing, is the people that have been very involved also with this, that aren't publicly recognized and don't stand up in front. Thank you for everything you've helped do. Their knowledge and expertise is the reason why this exists. I just sit up here and kind of sit here. But I think that it's plausible that we could get slowly back into realignment. The first thing we need to realize is the imposing threat. The fact that that there is an action that could happen on April 1st that has harm and that people have rights. Let's stop that first. Second, let's get the governance back into alignment. And when the governance is back into alignment with law, naturally, it should represent the community's opinion. And if the community's opinion is okay, we don't want affiliations, then they can make those determinations in the role that their governance is supposed to make those determinations. So I think it could have a slow, but I think that the first thing that needs to be done is the people that are responsible need to view this and have a reaction. And I think that nobody wants, the local trustees that represent the Boothbay Peninsula that are on the St. Andrews or the Lincoln County Healthcare, that's confusing. The trustees nobody wants to hold them accountable for what could plausibly have been maybe a misdirection. They want to just get back on alignment. And I think that's possible. But it really takes a huge action of those trustees.
Tom?
I respectfully want to disagree that there ever was an alignment, quote unquote, of interests. The other thing that I want to point out that's not raised in the position paper is that there are not 4 entities involved, which would be St. Andrews, Miles Memorial, Lincoln County, and Maine Health. There are 5. And the real problem, in my opinion, is the 5th entity, which isn't mentioned in the paper specifically. But my view of what's happened is that Lincoln County Healthcare, Miles Memorial, and therefore St. Andrews has been, quote, captured by management. So we get trustees who are convinced that, for example, that it's a waste of time to try to do what we're doing for the reason that the thing is basically not viable. How could such a trustee have acquired that opinion, except from the management of Lincoln County Healthcare? The fact is that they themselves report that from 2005 to 2010, Lincoln County was profitable. It's been profitable since, as is my understanding. There are many, many hospitals, rural hospitals, smaller than that hospital, that are viable. There's about $2 million a year that goes from St. Andrews to Lincoln County Healthcare for what, I'm not sure. But my guess is that it's for miscellaneous services, which in my opinion might better be accomplished by the hospital associating itself with other small rural CIH hospitals, which is one of the outcomes to be expected from the trip that Patty, for example, and others in that committee are on at the moment. But my point is that it's been made, from time to time it's been commented that this is a chess game. My question is, if it's a chess game, why are we playing checkers?
I think, Tom, when you were talking, you said that Lincoln County had been profitable 2005 to 2000.
I meant
St. Andrews.
St. Andrews.
St. Andrews
Yeah.
Hospital.
Yeah.
I may have missed it.
Management is represented in the paper as it's a Miles-led management.
Yeah, it's mentioned, but
And-
the phenomenon is one that to me is eminently familiar, and it's a case where, as a consequence of the nature of 501c3s, they end up with a board of trustees that is, for all practical purposes, controlled by management, and that's what's happened in this instance.
And I want people to realize, and if it's just a thought exercise at this point, think about the minority Boothbay area trustee. He is a minority on that board. Now you sit in a boardroom and discuss healthcare, which I think we learned in 3 months that we'll never understand healthcare. So you have to rely on your management to point you in the right direction. Now, take a management that has intentions that don't align with the board, and you're relying on them to give you information you're getting pulled into a direction. Now take the majority is pushing you in another direction. I actually have some sympathy for the trustees that rely on the majority, the direction, the Navigant report, the management, and I would like to hear what those trustees do now with new information, and soon to have more new information. I want to see if that is impactful of their decision. I really need to see
And
that.
I'm hopeful that it will be.
I don't see how it cannot be.
Mike,
I can't help but spin off on the checkers chess analogy. When we're up against an opponent playing Monopoly. If I could recap, and I think everybody in the room is about saying the same thing. Our first goal, as Jim expressed, is indeed to keep the hospital open. After that, this committee's not going away. Absolutely not going away, because we realize there are deep-rooted flaws in the structure of what's going on in the hospital, of the administration of the hospital. So we can't not continue to fill this room, even after we get an agreement to keep the hospital open. I'm not going away. I don't think anybody else is going away either. I think there are folks out there who'd love for us to go away, but we're not going away. There are lots of folks out there surprised that we're here tonight, and we're here every Tuesday, and we should be here every Tuesday for as long as it takes. Long term, I think we will indeed end up prevailing. What we need to do now is to reconsider one thing Julia said last Tuesday, and that is that we are not right now in an adversarial position. We just plain are not. We might be angry, we might be frustrated, but we are not in an adversarial position. That would be a mistake. That would make everybody dig their heels in. It would make us dig our heels in, and other parties dig their heels in. We need to talk. We need to give Maine Health a chance to digest our position paper, and their attorneys to digest the position paper. Let the attorneys talk it over, and we need to talk and negotiate first. If it comes to brass tacks, we're ready to do that, I'm sure. But for right now, we need to sit in a room and figure out what might occur in the future. I think what we'll end up with is something none of us are thinking about tonight, and something nobody on the other side of the fence is thinking about tonight. I think it'll be something totally different that none of us can imagine, because that's the way these things go. We have to be creative. Therefore, I think we can end up with a hospital, but then we can't just sit back on our laurels. We have to end up with a hospital administered the way we all envision that hospital to be administered in the future.
And I would also add to that, that when we win this battle, we as a community are going to have to back up that by utilizing St. Andrews. You are going to need to vote with your feet. You are going to need to take yourselves to St. Andrews. Because if you don't, then this whole thing down the road will become moot, because it will become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So when we win, and we will win, you've got to back it up by making use of this facility.
That's a good point, because all of the information that iVantage is putting together is based on the past, right? Well, there's a pretty important current that's happening, and if that impacts the future, the substance of that report doesn't really mean anything. That was pre-current status. So essentially, if the alignment of the governance is put back in, and Lincoln County Healthcare, or St. Andrews Hospital, St. Andrews Hospital is operating in the fashion that it was originally intended to, then people need to utilize it. And I think that this is a good and important lesson to learn, that if you don't utilize an asset, you lose it.
Sewell?
Two issues. One is the money that was given to St. Andrews by wills. And that in itself makes the trust fund complete by going to St. Andrews. And how, that's been given back to Miles, I don't understand. I would think that would be an easy pro bono case for a lawyer in town, if we could, to keep prices down. And the other issue is the equipment that they took out of St. Andrews Hospital and deposited it into Miles, and how they had the right to do that. And I think those two things can be brought back, and the sooner you start getting some teeth into it, up and things back and action happening, they'll know you're alive down here.
And I think that's represented in the position paper. I think there's a good, excellent points that are represented in the position paper. Another part that I don't remember reading in there, and if I don't read it verbatim, I'll probably mess it up, so you'll have to read this representative later, is some of the justification for eliminating the emergency department, which leads to the hospital status, is the ancillary services that go with an emergency department don't exist in St. Andrews. Well, that they don't exist in St. Andrews because they've been removed in the past years. See, obviously they're not there. They've been taken away. So that is represented in that paper as well.
There are services continuing to go to the Miles campus from the St. Andrews campus. One of them being some of the medical records. If I want to get an emergency department report on a patient of mine who has gone to the St. Andrews Emergency Department, we now need to call Miles. All the sterilization has gone to Miles, just to give a couple of examples. And one of my concerns is that St. Andrews will be so comprehensively gutted that they won't be able to sort out what is truly St. Andrews, or will say they're not able to sort out what is St. Andrews.
We'll
sort
help
out the
them.
records. Well, how can we, we have to do, you can't have this with all the delaying tactics that would be associated with this, and the combination, the idea that St. Andrews medical records aren't even being kept at St. Andrews. I don't know about all of them, but I do know about the emergency department ones. And as far as I am concerned, their attitude towards emergency department records is, oh, well, we'll send you whatever you want, even whenever you ask for it. Unless I go over there and watch to see who's going in through the emergency room, I can't do that either. Poor cooperation.
Doctor, great question. How do you make the
Yes.
situation whole?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the good question. It's,
How are they going to tangle it up so that we can't untangle it?
I think it is pretty
Trying.
tangled. I'd
Yes.
like to know the answer. I think the task force investing too much in the answer right now. I think we have the question.
Mhm. That should be perhaps one of our things to consider, is stopping any further migration.
I agree. I know that in order to be prepared for April 1st, it must take a tremendous amount of effort to be prepared for April 1st, which has to have started, I think it has to have started a year or two ago.
It
But
started when
sure.
they cleaned out the operating rooms, or at least part of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anybody else got something to say?
I'd like to just comment perhaps a little more optimistically. I believe it was Smith a while ago who wondered whether or not all of this had to do with Obamacare. And a number of people have commented that healthcare is in a state of extreme flux. And I think anybody that's been exposed to it realizes that that's true. And one thing we can expect over the next couple of years is change. And I want to call to everybody's attention the fact that we have a unique opportunity here to do something out front in terms of a community-based rural hospital.
Absolutely.
And that seems to me to be a very significant possibility. And the associations that we should make in the course of doing that may well be with other similarly placed hospitals. But with respect to the fact that healthcare is changing, there is a documentary being shown down in Portland this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at the Art Museum, which is a day in the life of an emergency department. It's not a rural hospital, it's a city hospital, it's the city of Oakland. And if you don't think that healthcare is in the process of change and about to change, my suggestion is that you go take a look at that video. I haven't seen that movie. I haven't seen it myself. I'm going down on Sunday. But my expectation is that what we'll see is that the present system is untenable with or without Obamacare.
Anyone else?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Okay. I think Peggy was the one that brought up the storming, forming, norming, and performing. Peggy Powis brought that up, and I think I continue to be inspired by the quickness that we're moving through that process. And when we first started with this task force, there was a question about, what is the task force doing? And I came into it not exactly knowing what my role was going to be, and just in answer to some of the selectmen's questions at last night's Booth Bay Harbor meeting, I think that the hospital, if you had to choose what are your top municipal resources, that the hospital would be right at the top of that list. And I think St. Andrews in Booth Bay Harbor is a great asset. And I'm really happy to be a part of this so that I can help improve the community as a selectman for the years to come. I'm going to be living here for a long time. I'm sure lots of you want to be here for a long time, and I think we want to encourage more people to join us here in Booth Bay Harbor over the years. And I think St. Andrews is a great part of welcoming people here, our guests and the residents. And so I feel very confident in the fact that this task force is an interlocal town agreement, and I just wanted to state that.
Thank you. Anyone else? Murray?
I think Val deserves the medal. And I just wished all the other selectmen in Booth Bay Harbor felt the way she did.
Yes.
Well, we're just glad that she's here with us.
Yes.
Well, it's kind of ironic that the position papers, most of it is about governance, and you're talking about, is this structured correctly? There's nothing wrong with a responsible governance that is representative of the people, that acts in accordance with law. And that goes for the task force, all the selectmen, and St. Andrews Hospital, Maine Health. And so a responsible, a representative government that works within the restraints of law. I'm a big believer in local government, so I just have to reiterate that statement.
I'm glad to be a part of it. I move we go home.
All in favor?
Second, yeah.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming out.